I'm so delighted to have you here. I have to say, I'm such a fan of your podcast, No Priors, with Elad Gil, and everyone here should immediately subscribe because it really is like a great way. You talk to everybody in the industry, sophisticated questions, you kind of geek out with them. It's just a great way to stay on top of current trends, and I found it very valuable.
That's very kind. I mean, Elad and I started as a side project, and we just said, like, well, nobody knows what's going to happen next, so you might as well talk about it while we're figuring it out.
Yeah. So you were name-checked on stage about an hour ago with reference to your recent post. Was it on Substack or LinkedIn or both?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, you put it out there, and it was about the importance of taste. You called it a decision-making accelerant, the relentless, almost painful ability to know what should exist, what shouldn't, and where quality matters. And that's kind of a timeless sentiment, but there was a reason why you wrote that now. Why is that important in the age of AI?
Yeah, so I often write when I'm trying to articulate my thoughts to a particular founder or founders that I'm working with. So this is kind of a subtweet, but I think it is timely because we are in an age where software, the ability to deliver 80% of the product you want, is becoming more and more commoditized, right? And I think that means the difference between 80 and 99%, understanding quality, understanding what decisions that are very subjective to make about scope, and really understanding your user, that becomes more important than ever.
So we can do more doesn't necessarily mean we should do more. That's where taste comes in.
Absolutely, right? I think some of the most popular products in the world are incredibly simple in what they choose not to do.
One of the first questions I asked you when we were talking on the phone beforehand was, are you optimistic? And you said, well, of course I am. How sad would it be to work on something this hard that I'm not optimistic about? So, for maybe those in the audience here or listening to the stream who are not convinced, why are you optimistic about where we're heading now with this technology?
I think it's, you're saying that the importance of taste is kind of a timeless statement. I think technology overall has been the driver to more abundance and productivity in the economy, right? How can we create more value for everyone to enjoy? That doesn't mean there aren't questions about distribution, but I think I stand, my partner Mike and our investing team, we sit in a place where we see thousands of companies every year, and faster than I've ever seen in my investing and operating career. So over the last 15 years, I've never seen products adopted so fast, right? And when I look at that, there's a user on the other end of any of these things really excited and choosing to do something differently. And I think it just speaks to the value creation that's happening right now. And I think we're 1 or 2% in. The fact that it's happening so fast, I have strong empathy that that's scary for people, for society writ large. But I do think it's going to be enormous creation.
Do you subscribe? We've talked a lot today, for some reason, about Dario's prognostications of doom for the labor force.
I see.
Okay. Do you? It just keeps coming up. Some people are sort of dunking on him. Do you subscribe to the notions that we are heading towards a mass dislocation of human workers?
So I do think there's dislocation, right? But I don't think that is total reduction in demand. There's one view of the future, which is how many people have seen WALL-E here, that we're all just sitting there, and this is a vision of abundance. It's not mine, where people just are sitting around watching their entertainment and on their floating chairs in space and nobody works. I don't think that's true. Every other technological revolution in history has just created new jobs. And so what I would, I guess, agree with Dario on is there's going to be a lot of change where you will not be paid the same amount for doing the same task 10 years from now in a number of different fields. And that might actually happen faster than in other technical revolutions. But I'll give you one data point from the portfolio, actually. We have, I want to say 30, 35 companies. There's exactly one that sells on cost. Right? You don't need, the ROI is from not hiring as many people. Every other company is do something new, right? Be more competitive, help your people do more with less. And so I just think that that's pretty interesting that the ratio is 30 to 1.
Your job is essentially to pick the winners, and yet you're describing a world where a lot of companies are exploding. The old measure might have been, well, ARR, annual recurring revenues. If they're at 100 million, they got there quickly, like that looks like a success. But these days, because we're in this vast age of experimentation, a lot of these companies are showing success via the traditional metrics. So how do you select the winners, and how much of maybe the current rising tides do you feel like is a little artificial?
I definitely think that the durability of usage or revenue is something we take a harder look at, now versus 5 years ago, because the novelty of just taking these models and shaping them toward a particular use case, if that is image generation or the ability to generate a certain type of document, it's so powerful that people will use it, right? But if it's so easy to create these products, then actually you have quite a competitive field. And so we look more at, what we want to do is back like category winners. And we look more at like, is this the leading player? Like, what are the use cases really? And then we try to take out a piece that's experimental revenue. I think the other thing in what you said is the bar is higher for what is leading growth now. And so I think the sort of traditional, I forget what venture firms set this up, but the like growth 3x and then 2x and then 2x, and you're kind of a best-in-class firm. That is not at all true now, right? Because you see people growing 50x. And so we do encourage companies to be really ambitious and keep moving fast.
So Conviction is a relatively small investor, right? Am I right that you've raised about 330 million?
Yep. I think it's, 345, yeah.
Yeah, and yet we are in an age where it feels like even new companies are raising hundreds of millions of dollars in valuations in the billions. So how, when you're writing $1 to $5 million checks, how are you kind of competing in a world where it's also SoftBank and Microsoft and all the big players rushing in?
Yeah, so I think that we have had, I feel very lucky that we have had the privilege of being very early investors in great companies so far. Harvey, Sierra, Thinking Machines, Cognition.
And Figure, who was, we just heard from.
Brett's company right here. At some point, some of these companies need a lot of capital, and a lot more capital than we have as a fund, much less like the $1 to $20 million that we're offering people at the beginning. But perhaps the most arrogant claim in starting a new venture fund is there's an entire capital cycle for these companies, and the capital markets are deeper than ever, right? You have lots of sovereigns playing and more money continuing to flow into venture. But the very beginning, when companies start, entrepreneurs aren't looking at capital as a commodity. And so all you need is access, and you need to be right? And those two things are hard, but having more money doesn't necessarily help.
Have you found, by the way, that the podcast is kind of strengthening your investment foundation, that it's giving you access to deals and visibility that you might not have otherwise had?
I don't know if I would credit it with an investment in particular so far. I'd love for that to be true, and please suggest guests and everything. But I think that in an age of commoditized capital, having a venue for people to understand what you're about, who you know, what you understand is more important than ever. And so I think it's useful for people to understand what me and Elad think about.
So this might seem like inside baseball to some folks here, but OpenAI just hired Fiji Simo as a top executive. Now Fiji ran the ad business at Meta. She built an ad business for Instacart. And when they made that hire, I thought, we think of AI as really like a subscription world. Mm-hmm. Does it signify that some of these businesses and maybe even some startups are starting to think about advertising as a way to get to profitability?
I would be shocked if they weren't, from a business perspective. So my partner Mike Vernal was a VP at Facebook. He worked with Fiji. He was at early Facebook and believes really strongly in the advertising business model as a democratizing function. Right? Not everybody in the world wants to pay the same subscription price for a service, and advertising is a way to get coverage of internet services to more people. I would be shocked if that wasn't a debate at OpenAI today, and I think I can think of no one better than Fiji to go run that business should they choose to do it.
So recently OpenAI spent $6 billion to acquire Johnny Ive's device firm IO, mm-hmm. and pledged to introduce a new kind of AI-centric hardware. And there haven't been many details, but you're closer to this than most of us. So help us imagine what a new a whole new genre of AI device might look like?
Yeah, so I think starting with the question of what makes it possible for there to be a new device, the way I think of it is you need reasons to have new I/O, right? Like if the form factor is, well, I have a phone and I can take it out and use applications when I need them, and it has all these amazing functions, then Apple or Google or somebody who makes phones today should probably do that. Right? If the form factor is anything like, well, in a way that a consumer is comfortable with, I'm going to have full context on what's happening in your life for as much as you'll give me. Everything you hear, everything you say, the ability to talk to it all the time, vision. I think that's an incredibly hard set of problems to go figure out. I love Johnny Ive. I think he has wonderful ideas about what the interfaces for AI should be. We talked about this recently, but if you imagine that actually changes the hardware spec, right? Your phone is not designed for even just a basic thing like battery power. It's not designed to listen to you all the time.
But aren't you describing an Alexa or a Google Home?
No, I think the Alexa is designed to be stationary in one setting. I spend most of my time at work. I don't know about you guys. When I'm home, I'm hanging with my kids and my spouse and sleeping, right? So I think that the idea of the personal device as the most important thing in our technology world has held true so far, and I think that's possible in AI.
Do you think something we wear?
Yes, I think that is the most logical view of it. The couple working theses that people have are something like a pen or a set of glasses.
Yeah.
Right.
Two more questions before we lose you. What new AI service are you infatuated with right now?
So I have young kids, and I think, well, let me start with the premise of one of the reasons I'm so optimistic about AI is I think more people are creators of different kinds than we give them credit for in today's world, because it's really hard to create the tools. You spend so much of your time learning to use the tools of a trade. And the fact that we can give people access to making images, writing, video, voice, music, and lower the barrier dramatically, I think is just really compelling. And so I use a combination of services like HeyGen and Imagen and Suno for music and ChatGPT and Claude to make personalized stories for my kids. And I think about how excited that makes them to come up with their own narratives and just be creative, because they have this feedback cycle of I came up with something, and it's the quality of the output is so good that I think it will keep them more creative over time.
So one of the things that comes through on the podcast is that you are an unapologetic geek.
Okay.
So give us a piece of fiction, a novel or a TV show or a movie that you think captures this moment, that everybody should read or watch now as a guide to this world we're moving into.
Yeah, so I was actually at my friend's, Dylan Field, who runs Figma, Lena Nadolinsky, who's also an entrepreneur, and Laura Deming, who runs a company that is working on cryopreservation, or freezing, for example, organs for transfer. And we were watching this TV show, Pantheon. It's kind of a niche TV show. I think it's on Netflix, but it is about uploading consciousness and a bunch of the societal and philosophical questions that comes with that. But it's it's based on some stories from this writer, Ken Liu, who was an engineer by background. And so it's technically, the best type of science fiction, in my view, is technically sort of feasible in the far future, and then also feels very real as a world. So I love this one.
Put it on your streaming list. Sarah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brad.